On Thanksgiving, my mother-in-law joked that my daughter's health condition was just attention-seeking. Everyone laughed. My husband didn't say anything, and my daughter ran into her room. Within minutes, all conversation in the house stopped because my mother-in-law laughed about my daughter's heart condition at the Thanksgiving table. Not a small joke. Not something awkward people ignored. She said it loudly while everyone was eating. Emma's not sick. She just likes attention. People actually laughed. My 12-year-old daughter pushed her chair back and ran upstairs. No one followed her. No one told Linda to stop. My husband Mark kept eating. I waited a few seconds because I honestly thought someone else would say something. Anyone. No one did. Linda took another sip of wine and kept talking. Kids learn fast what works. Fake a little weakness and suddenly the whole house revolves around you. That was when I stood up. I walked to the kitchen counter and unplugged the crock pot. The soft bubbling stopped and the room went quiet. 15 people looked at me. Dinner is over, I said. Linda laughed again. Cassie, sit down. I shook my head. You called my daughter a liar in front of everyone. Relax, she said. Emma knows I was joking. Mark didn't look up from his plate. Mom didn't mean anything. I looked at him. Your daughter just ran upstairs crying. He shrugged. You're making this into a scene. That was the moment I realized I was alone in that room. I walked upstairs and knocked on Emma's door. She opened it right away. Her eyes were red. Can we leave, she asked. Yes. We packed 2 bags quickly. Emma moved slowly because even standing too long made her dizzy. Her doctor still did not know exactly what was causing it, but the heart specialist had already warned us that stress could make it worse. When we came downstairs, everyone was still sitting at the table. Linda looked annoyed. You're still doing this? I said we're leaving. Mark finally stood up. Cassie, stop. I kept walking. Outside the air was cold and quiet. Emma got into the car and I started the engine. Mark came out a moment later. You're being dramatic. I said you let your mother humiliate our daughter. He said Mom just doesn't believe all these medical labels. I pulled out of the driveway. He knocked on the window. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I just drove. Emma stayed quiet for almost 15 minutes. Then she asked something that made me grip the steering wheel tighter. Grandma said you might leave Dad because of me. I looked at her. When did she say that? Last week. He came over when you were working. I frowned. Linda had told me she had not been to our house in months. I was about to ask Emma another question when I noticed headlights in the mirror. A black SUV turned when we turned. I kept driving. 2 more turns. The SUV stayed behind us. And that was when Emma said something else. Mom, that's the same car Grandma arrived in last week. I kept driving but my eyes stayed on the mirror. The black SUV stayed 2 cars behind us. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just someone heading the same direction. But the moment Emma said she had seen that car before, my stomach tightened. You're sure? I asked. Emma nodded. I remember because it was really big and shiny. Grandma said her friend drove her. Linda didn't have friends with cars like that. She drove an old sedan and complained about gas prices every time we saw her. I turned onto a smaller street. The SUV turned too. Emma noticed. I know. I drove another block and pulled into a grocery store parking lot. If someone was following us, they would either drive past or come in. The SUV slowed. Then it drove past the entrance and kept going. I waited a full minute before breathing normally again. Maybe it really was nothing. Emma leaned her head against the window. Grandma stayed for a long time that day, she said. What day exactly? Last Thursday. He brought cookies. Linda had never brought cookies to our house in 12 years. What did she talk about? Emma shrugged. Mostly about you and Dad. He said you fight because I'm always sick. Mark and I barely fought at all. In fact, the only real arguments we had recently were about Linda constantly questioning Emma's diagnosis. Did she say anything else? Emma hesitated. She asked a lot of questions about my doctor. What kind of questions? Where his office was. When my appointments were. Dad ever came with us. That made my chest feel tight. Why would she ask that? Emma added something else quietly. She also asked if I ever faint when I'm alone. I stared at her. Why would she ask you that? Emma didn't know. We sat there for a moment in the parking lot. The grocery store lights buzzed above us and carts rattled across the asphalt. Then my phone rang. Mark. I let it ring. It rang again. Then a message came through. Where are you? Mom is upset. Come back so we can finish dinner like adults. I stared at the screen. Emma looked at me. Are we going home tonight? I thought about it. About the table full of people laughing. About Mark sitting there like nothing had happened. About Linda visiting my house behind my back and asking my daughter strange questions. No, I said. We're not. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. This time it was only one sentence. Mom says you're overreacting because Emma has been lying about symptoms again. I showed Emma the message without thinking. She read it slowly. Then she said something that made my heart drop. I didn't tell you something about last Thursday. What? Emma looked down at her hands. Grandma brought someone with her. I felt cold. Emma said she didn't know his name. But she remembered one thing very clearly. He was the man driving the black SUV. I asked Emma if she was sure. He said yes. Grandma said he was helping with something. Helping with what? I asked. Emma shook her head. They talked in the kitchen for a long time. I was upstairs. That made me uneasy for a different reason. Linda had been inside my house with a stranger and never told me. Did you see him clearly? I asked. A little. He was tall and had gray hair. He didn't talk to me much. He just asked a few questions. What kind of questions? Emma thought for a moment. If I ever faint when I'm standing up. If my chest hurts when I run. If I get dizzy in the shower. Those were the exact questions Emma's cardiologist had asked during her last appointment. How would a stranger know to ask those? Did Grandma say who he was? I asked. Emma nodded slowly. He said he was a doctor. My stomach turned. A doctor from where? He didn't know. Emma also remembered something else. When they were leaving, Grandma told her not to tell me they had stopped by. She said I would make a big deal about it. That part made my hands start to shake. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the home security app. We had cameras on the front door and the driveway. I had installed them after a break-in happened down the street last year. I pulled up last Thursday afternoon. There was, at 3:14 p.m., a black SUV pulling into our driveway. My heart started beating faster. Linda stepped out of the passenger side. A man got out of the driver's seat. He was tall just like Emma said. They walked up to the door. I skipped ahead through the footage. 2 hours later they came back outside. The man looked directly at the camera before getting into the SUV. I paused the video. Something about his face felt familiar but I couldn't place it. Emma leaned closer to the screen. That's him. I zoomed in on the image. Then I realized why he looked familiar. I had seen his picture before. On a website. I opened my browser and searched the name that had just popped into my head. Within seconds his photo appeared on the screen. The same face. Same gray hair. Same serious expression. Emma looked at the phone. Do you know him? I nodded slowly. Yes. I knew exactly who he was. He was a private medical investigator hired by insurance companies. And the article on the screen explained exactly what they did. They tried to prove people were faking illnesses, which meant someone had hired him to investigate my 12-year-old daughter. I sat in the parking lot staring at the article on my phone. The man from the video had a name. Daniel Hargrove. The website described him as a medical investigator who helped insurance companies detect fraudulent claims. Emma read the screen quietly. Why would someone think I'm faking? I didn't answer right away because the answer was becoming obvious. Someone had hired him. And there were only two people who constantly said Emma was pretending. Linda and Mark. I closed the article and checked the rest of the camera footage from Thursday. Most of it showed nothing unusual. Linda and the man stayed inside the house almost the entire time. But right before they left, something strange happened. Emma opened the front door and stood on the porch. Linda stepped outside and handed the man a folder. He flipped through the papers while standing in our driveway. Then he asked Emma something. Emma answered. Even without sound I could tell the conversation lasted several minutes. I looked at Emma. What did he ask you out there? He tried to remember. He asked if I ever felt fine and pretended to be dizzy so I could stay home from school. I felt anger building in my chest. What did you say? I said no. Emma looked confused. Why would he think that? Because someone told him you might. My phone buzzed again. Mark calling. This time I answered. Cassie, where are you? You embarrassed my mother. I laughed a little. Your mother brought a medical investigator into our house. There was silence on the line. Then Mark said something that made the situation even worse. He said you weren't supposed to find out about that yet. My grip tightened on the phone. Yet. He kept talking. Mom just wanted another opinion. You hired someone to secretly question our daughter. He said it wasn't like that. Then explain it. Mom thinks Emma exaggerates her symptoms and the insurance company has been asking questions about the tests. We just wanted to be sure. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you let a stranger interrogate her when I wasn't home. It was just a few questions. I looked at Emma sitting beside me in the car. Mark, I said she is 12. He didn't respond. Then he said something else. Mom is worried the doctors are scaring her for no reason. That sentence pushed me past the point of being calm. Your mother told Emma that I might leave you because of her illness. Mark hesitated. Mom would never say that. Emma spoke loudly so he could hear. She did say it. More silence. Then Mark said, we'll talk about this when you get home. I said, we're not coming home tonight. Cassie, don't do this. I hung up. Emma looked at me. What are we going to do? Before I could answer, headlights flashed across the parking lot. I looked up. The same black SUV slowly turned into the grocery store entrance. And this time it didn't drive past. It parked 3 rows away from us. The driver door opened. And Daniel Hargrove stepped out. Emma noticed him at the same time I did. That's him. Daniel Hargrove stepped out of the SUV and closed the door slowly. He looked around the parking lot like he was trying to find something. Then his eyes landed on our car. For a moment he just stood there. Then he started walking toward us. My first instinct was to start the engine and leave, but something stopped me. If he had been following us from the house, then running would not solve anything. Emma watched him through the windshield. Why is he here? I didn't know. Hargrove stopped a few feet from the driver's side window and knocked on the glass. I lowered the window a few inches. He spoke first. Mrs. Parker. I didn't like that he knew my name. Yes. He glanced at Emma briefly and then back at me. I was hoping we could talk for a moment. About what? Your daughter. I said absolutely not. He nodded like he expected that answer. I understand why you're upset. Your mother-in-law hired me to evaluate a situation involving a possible insurance dispute. I said my daughter is not a situation. He didn't argue. He simply said, I figured you might want to know what your husband asked me to look into. That sentence caught my attention. What did you just say? He looked slightly confused. Your husband contacted the insurance company first. That's how my firm got involved. For a few seconds I didn't understand. Mark told me Linda had hired the investigator. But Hargrove was saying something different. Mark filed a report with the insurance company claiming there were concerns about exaggerated symptoms connected to ongoing cardiac testing. I stared at him. You're saying my husband started this? That's what the documentation shows. Emma looked between us. Dad thinks I'm lying. I felt sick. Hargrove continued. Your mother-in-law insisted on meeting me in person because she believed the doctors were misdiagnosing Emma. That explained why Linda brought him to the house. But it didn't explain why Mark would open an investigation against his own daughter. Then Hargrove said something else. There's actually another reason I followed you tonight. I crossed my arms. What reason? He looked at Emma again. Because after reviewing the medical records this afternoon, I realized something was very wrong with this case. Wrong how? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin folder. The documents inside were copies of Emma's hospital tests. He tapped one page. This result should have triggered emergency treatment weeks ago. My heart started pounding. What are you talking about? Hargrove looked serious. According to this report, your daughter has a severe electrical abnormality in her heart rhythm. I felt the air leave my lungs. Our cardiologist never said that. Hargrove nodded slowly. That's exactly the problem. Because the doctor who signed this report isn't your cardiologist. He turned the page and showed me the signature. And the name written there made my hands start shaking. It was Mark's name. For a moment I thought I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. Mark Parker. His name was clearly written under the signature line. I looked at Hargrove. My husband is not a doctor. I know, he said. Then why is his name on my daughter's medical report? Hargrove handed me the rest of the folder. Because this report wasn't created by the hospital. It was submitted later. I flipped through the pages quickly. Copies of test results. Notes from appointments. And then a second version of one document I recognized from Emma's last cardiology visit. The numbers were different. In the hospital version, the abnormal rhythm was marked as severe. In the second version, it was marked as mild. Someone had changed it. Emma sat quietly beside me. Mom, what does that mean? I didn't answer because my mind was racing through the last few months. Emma fainting at school. The cardiologist saying they needed more tests. Mark suddenly insisting we slow down with appointments. Mark telling me insurance was questioning the cost. I looked at Hargrove. Where did you get the original report? Directly from the hospital lab this afternoon. Then why does the one in our records look different? He answered without hesitation. Because someone replaced it. My chest felt tight. Why would my husband do that? Hargrove didn't guess. He just said what he knew. When the insurance company received Mark's report claiming exaggerated symptoms, they requested supporting medical documents. The file they received included the altered version. Emma whispered. Dad told them I was pretending. I closed my eyes for a second. Then another thought hit me. Why would Mark go through all that trouble? Insurance disputes made no sense. Our coverage was good and the hospital had never denied anything. I looked at Hargrove again. Why did you really come to the parking lot tonight? He didn't hesitate. Because once I saw the real lab results I contacted the hospital. And they told me something that worried them. What? Emma's heart condition isn't mild. It's extremely dangerous. People with this type of rhythm abnormality can collapse without warning. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Then why hasn't our cardiologist called us? Hargrove looked directly at me. Because the hospital says they've been trying to reach your husband for 3 days. I felt cold. Mark handles most of the insurance calls and appointment confirmations. Which means every urgent call from the hospital had been going to him. Emma spoke quietly. Dad said the doctors were overreacting. I stared at the dashboard while the pieces finally started forming a picture that made no sense. Mark altered medical reports. Mark told the insurance company Emma might be faking. Mark ignored calls about a dangerous heart condition. And Mark allowed Linda to humiliate her at dinner. Then Hargrove said the one thing that made the entire situation even worse. There's another detail you should know. I looked at him. What? He pointed to the original hospital report again. The severe abnormal rhythm only appears under one specific condition. Which condition? He paused for a moment. When the patient has been exposed to certain medications. I felt my stomach drop. Emma doesn't take any heart medication yet. Hargrove nodded slowly. Exactly. Which means the hospital is now asking a very serious question. Who has been giving your daughter something that affects her heart rhythm?